You are happy. You're watching Public Affairs. Berkowitz is my name, and politics is our game, and we will be doing politics and public policy this evening because we have as our guest former State Senator Steve Rauschenberger, who's mounting a comeback in the 22nd District. He's trying to reclaim the seat that he gave up to run in 2006. First, he was running for governor in the Republican primary. Then he was running for, then he decided to run for lieutenant governor on the ticket with Ron Gidwitz, who of course was running for governor. So that was the Gidwitz-Rauschenberger ticket. Yep. And they did a fine job. Communicated ideas, were a little short on votes.
Yeah, a little short on votes, right.
Came in 4th out of 4. No, for how many? Actually, I'm just trying to remember. How many was it?
Well, the winner was Judy Bar-Topinka.
2006.
Yeah.
And then there was Oberweis.
Yes.
How could we forget?
Third, yeah. 3rd out of 3.
Oh, yeah.
I was 2nd out of 4.
No, I see what happens
governor.
when you ad-lib things. You screw up because, well, as the host, I wasn't even thinking of that.
Yeah.
But if we were going to start something else, but just make sure we get it right. The winner of the Republican primary in 2006 was Judy Bar-Topinka, the Republican primary for governor, in case any of you folks forgot, like we just did.
And Joe Burkett beat me for lieutenant governor.
No, but this is the number 2 person in that race for governor when we're running as a ticket was, of course, as we said, Jim Oberweis. I think it was 38% to 32%. The number 3 person who we just forgot, who's now running for governor. So we're trying to get Bill on here. We don't want to get on his bad side by forgetting that he ran. Well, maybe he wants to forget that he ran in 2006.
He needs to come and remind us.
All right, so of course Brady got 20% and then Gidwitz got 10%. You were running on the ticket with Gidwitz. And so you jointly got 10%?
No, because in the primary, the lieutenant governor runs separate.
Christ.
Right.
We're going to get this right, Dad.
Yeah, Joe Burkett, the state's attorney of DuPage County, beat me in the lieutenant governor's primary. Right. I finished 2nd.
That's why you wanted to say that.
Yeah.
But the numbers I said were right. We did get that right in the primary. We're going to, spend most of the show talking. No, we won't spend most of the show talking about. But seriously, so Topinka got 38%, Oberweis 32%, Brady 20%, and 10% went to Gidwitz in the primary.
Something like that.
And you lost to Burkett, like 60-40 or something?
Oh, yeah, I think he had about 55 and I had about 35, and there were some minor candidates because there were Sandy Wegman, there were other candidates in that race as well.
All right, but so getting on with the show, you're now running for state senate.
Yes.
And you're running against Mike Noland, who replaced
Senator Mike Noland, right.
Who's the incumbent. And people might wonder, Steve, you did this for 14 years. You were a state senator. You gave it up to run first for governor, lieutenant governor. You were one of the Fab Five. And so a lot of people, they would say, start the show by asking you, why do you want to be state senator? But we're not going to do that because we know why. Because you believe strongly in public policy, the public policy that you think is best, and you see, and I'm just doing this from predictions, folks, we haven't really discussed this. You look around you and you see what people say is a $13 billion deficit, and you want to tell your voters and our viewers whether there is a $13 billion deficit and what that means. But more importantly, you want to tell them that when Pat Quinn says, as the gubernatorial candidate, you need to increase taxes by at least $4 billion, what he calls a tax surcharge for education. And Bill Brady says, as the Republican nominee for governor, no, you don't need to increase taxes at all to deal with the deficit. And Rich Whitney, we had on last week, Green Party candidate for governor, says he wants to increase taxes by $13 billion. All right, and so you want to be there running for state senate, and we'll get to Mike Noland.
Keep an eye on all those guys.
Yeah, to keep an eye on those guys. And
because the real
so tell us, Steve, do you think, I mean, no, Brady's running, he's not going to raise taxes. You're probably running on the same thing. The Republicans are doing that. That's good policy. Nobody wants to raise taxes. But just tell me. You can whisper to me. Nobody's going to hear this, okay? I mean, do you really, once you get elected, do you going to raise taxes a little bit to get by?
I think we need to increase revenues to solve our problem. But raising taxes and increasing revenues aren't necessarily the same thing. If Illinois had Indiana's unemployment rate, you could ring the register and add about $1.4 billion to the state general revenue.
If they had Indiana's
if we
unemployment
had Indiana's unemployment
rate. In
rate.
Illinois, it's 10.4%. What is it in Indiana?
It's around 6.5.
And so you're saying that gives Illinois about $1.5 billion more in revenue?
In the last 8 years.
But still, you got that.
Is
there a $13 billion?
Let me finish. Yeah. Well, no. Well, there's $13 billion in revenue shortfall or overspending. There's an annual recurring deficit of about $6 billion.
That's an operating deficit.
Yeah, operating
deficit.
deficit.
And you're saying there's $7 billion in unpaid bills? Is that the other?
Correct.
That's the distinction
That's
you're making.
the accumulated, right.
That's the unpaid bills as opposed to the operating deficit.
In other words, the unpaid bills you have to catch up and pay for, but it's a one-time thing. The recurring deficit is they've allowed state government to be $6 billion bigger than its revenue.
If you have Illinois almost cutting its unemployment rate almost in half,
right.
then you get $1.5 billion more in revenue.
You want more?
Yeah, you're saying that cures $1.5 billion of your $6 billion operating deficit.
There's a bigger deficit in Illinois than the
operating
financial
budget
one.
deficit.
There's a bigger deficit, and that's a deficit of leadership. People don't believe in Illinois anymore. We are rated in the credit market somewhere around Greece. We pay a higher...
Well, it's not quite. You know, Rich Miller always points out, it's not like Greece. I got to stop you there because he says it's ridiculous. You've read that.
It's not ridiculous.
You've read that. You've read that.
The
You tell Rich Miller why it's not
the
ridiculous.
insurance premium we're paying is in line with what Greece has to put, to the insurance premium they have to pay on their bonds. My point is, people have lost faith in the state of Illinois. In the last 8 years, 750,000 people have voted with their feet and moved out of the state of Illinois. Illinois is one of 3 states in America that's losing population.
What's the
Caterpillar 2 days ago, or a few weeks ago, announced that they were going to do a new plant, but they were going to do it in Texas. 500 more permanent, high-quality, high-wage manufacturing jobs, but they're going to put it in Texas, not in their home state of Illinois.
Well, did they say why?
Well, you have to ask, because people, they're sick and tired of corrupt leadership in
Maybe
Chicago
and
in Springfield.
the cost of labor is less there, is possible?
They're sick. No, it's not a labor cost
not an
issue.
immigrant yeah?
No. What this is about, what's the first thing a business wants? They want a stable political system that doesn't shake them down.
I thought they wanted to maximize profits.
They do, but to be able to predict and do that, you've got to have a political system that's honest. I mean, you've got one governor in jail and the other one, we don't know what's going to happen to exactly. We have a Speaker of the House who flaunts the Illinois Constitution, stands in front of the video cameras and says, we don't want to pass a balanced budget right now. It's inconvenient. We'll talk about it after the election. You got an Attorney General who's like the see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil.
Do the Republicans want to pass a balanced budget here in 2010?
I think they do.
And can you lay out the budget for me as to what it was that they proposed?
No.
Because I didn't see it. Did you see it?
No, I didn't see their budget.
So don't you think somebody could criticize those Republicans and say, can't you guys come up with an alternative? Or are you the party of no?
You can criticize that whole bunch. I mean,
you would criticize the Republicans as well?
I think the Republicans should be sitting down in Springfield right now in the Senate chambers howling for John Cullerton to reconvene the Senate. It's against the Constitution of the state of Illinois.
They're not doing that.
It's a violation of the Constitution of the state of Illinois not to address the budget. Okay. Now, they've adjourned. They went home to campaign just the same way the creeps,
Republicans
and Democrats, all of them, just the same way the creeps in Congress this year decided they wouldn't do a federal budget because they don't want to disclose how much Obamacare is costing. Okay. It's time to stop lying to the American public. It's time to stop lying to citizens and voters, and that's why I'm running again, because I am offended by what's happening in Springfield.
So leadership, you made your point. You want to tell them about leadership.
That's where the deficit is.
That's number one. But there still is a $13 billion deficit.
That is curable.
And the fiscal year 2011 has a projected operating deficit of $6 billion. And if you were there and you had won the gubernatorial election and you were governor right now,
there wouldn't be a $6 billion operating
say
deficit.
They called you in as a fireman, okay? Somehow you got to be governor.
Or they asked me to be director of the Bureau of the Budget. You can manage this state and not spend more revenue than you receive. You can manage this state without revenue.
We're taping this on August 15th, 2010. What would you do as director of the Bureau of Budget, whatever it's called, OMB? Is that what it is? Office of Management Budget?
I don't know what they call it anymore.
Yeah. So say you were that, and you had 10 months left to deal with this. What would you do to cure that now $4.5 billion operating deficit? Because you got $1.5 billion cured by. I mean, be realistic. The $1.5 billion you didn't get because to get the unemployment rate, you can't do that instantaneously.
Right.
So you got to come up with $6 billion.
You can't do any of this instantaneously.
No, but what are you going to do? What do you do to address the budget deficit this year if you're governor?
It took 7 years to dig this hole.
So you're going to have an unbalanced budget operating deficit.
Well,
you're going to have an operating deficit in June of 2011, even if you're governor.
You're going to, yes, even if I'm governor, you're going to have to use borrowing strategically to manage through your deficit
So how much
reduction.
are you going to borrow?
I don't know. You'd have to take
Well,
a
how
look.
much are you going to cut spending? You could do that.
Yeah, well, you can cut spending.
That
Darn
sound-
right, I'd cut spending.
Quinn says he's cut $1.5 billion.
Well,
Has Quinn cut $1.5 billion?
He's cut $1.5 billion over what his agencies asked for.
And they asked for an increase?
Sure they did.
So what's the net? Is
Pat
there a net?
Quinn-
Is there a net increase that he's asking for
Pat
now?
Quinn signed an extension of an ASME contract spending $255 million to give raises to DHS ASME employees. In the middle of this crisis in Springfield, what's going on in Springfield is wrong. It can be fixed. You can stop spending more than you're taking in.
But he was
Quit
giving
digging the hole deeper.
an increase to people on his staff of about
No,
ranging at 20%. Because
This
you're
is
talking
over and
about
above this. This is separate from that. 5 weeks before the primary, he signed an ASME contract extension that gave 7% in this fiscal year and 7% next year.
He negotiated that extension.
Yes.
And he
It
signed
cost $255 million, $250 million increase
He gave 7%
in wages
annual increases?
across the board.
Does that mean it was a step increase as well as a COLA?
That's what the value of the contract is. At a time when...
What would you have done? What would you have done if you were
At a time when 1 in 8 Illinoisans is out of work or underemployed.
So what would you have...
At a time when we have a revenue failure. I mean, this guy is passing out cash to his political cronies.
What would you have...
I would not have signed that extension.
Tell me what increase you would have agreed to.
Zero.
Zero.
I mean, these people should be happy to have a job.
When you say sign an extension, was the contract up? When was it up?
It was a contract extension for ASME. In other words, they
Was the contract up? Is that why they were doing an
the
extension?
salary portion was up. They frequently have 4-year contracts. The first 2 years raises are set in the contract. You have to have a renegotiation on the financial terms.
For the last 2 years.
Yeah, he agreed to 7 and 7.
And
At a time when...
If he had not agreed, if he had done what you said, no increase, what options were available to ASME? Could they have walked off the job for that?
I suppose they could have gone on strike. Would have been.
That's permitted by the contract because...
I don't know, but my point is
that's what you would have pushed for.
The idea that somehow there's no money in Springfield and they have all these crushing needs that only they understand, that the rest of us are too stupid. You can live within your means. People do it all the time. This government can. Now, you can't erase $13 billion in one 12-month budget period. But A, you can stop making the deficit bigger. 2, you can begin a plan that pays off that $7 billion in unpaid bills. And 3, you can start running honest programs.
Okay, but how much spending would you cut to deal with the operating deficit?
I think you'd have to cut in the range of $4 to $5 billion in the first year.
This year. If you were governor right now, in August 15th, you would spend from August 15th the next few months figuring out how to find $4 to $5 billion to cut?
Yes.
Okay, and...
First of all, the General Assembly would be sitting in Springfield because it's actually their job to cut the budget.
But
if I was governor, they would not adjourn and go back
and run campaigns.
make
But you could make recommendations.
Yes.
You were the budgeteer. What was your title when you were in the
I was chairman of the Senate Appropriations Committee from 1994 to 2002.
Okay, so you knew the budget well then?
I know the old budget, and I know pretty much the elements of today's budget.
Okay, so outline the major areas where you would cut $4 to $5 billion.
There's only 4 places where you spend a lot of money. So if you're going to cut, it's K-12 education, it's higher ed, it's corrections, it's the Medicaid program, and the pensions. I mean, that's where all the money is.
Well, and let's start then with education. How much and where would you cut education?
Well, first of all, you can't let it grow anymore. I mean, you've got to stop growth.
No increase this year.
Yeah, you're going to have to put education on a diet.
That doesn't help.
I think you're going to have to ask school districts to live on the appropriated level that you had 3 years ago. You can roll back those appropes and give them some time to transition.
So a uniform across the board back to 3 years ago, whatever it was.
Adjusted for student population. Because there's districts.
There are districts that gain population, others lost, adjusted so that.
And I think you also got to go into the school code and you got to start getting rid of mandated programs. Okay. I mean, the school code today is 4.5 inches deep.
What's mandated that we should have?
Driver's education.
You don't think driver's education is a good program?
Art education, special. I think they're all wonderful programs, and they all ought to be decided by local school boards. You know, a program recognizing Kazimir Pulaski Day. I mean, over and over and over again, legislators have projected their dreams onto the school system.
Do you have any Polish people living in your district in the 22nd?
It's a big Polish population.
And they agree with you?
But it shouldn't be a mandate. That should not be a state law. We should ask educators to teach our kids to read and to write and to understand
No more holiday for Pulaski.
Well, no, I don't care whether you have a holiday or not, but you ought to have school on that day. We know very well that 5 days of continuous school is
the right thing. So, Steve, at the end of the day, roughly how much will this save from education? How much are you cutting education?
You got to take $1 billion out of education. You got to take about $1.5 billion out of Medicaid. You got to get serious with what you're doing in corrections, which is a horribly expensive program that doesn't work anymore. And then you got to go through the rest of the state government and get rid of programs that don't work.
What about pensions? Can you save any money this year? Can you do anything to save any money this year from pensions?
I'm not sure. There's a question. I tend to agree with the attorneys from the Civic Federation that any employee has earned their vested benefits to today. So, but prospectively, even for employees who work for state government,
the legislature could pass legislation starting September 1 that reduced benefits for current employees.
Yes,
pension
I believe
benefits.
that's true.
And how much do you think you could save if you did that and you thought it would work?
I don't know. That's some of the hardest numbers to figure out, and you'd have to see what consensus.
Medicaid, is that basically managed care? Is that what you would do?
No. You need to go into the Medicaid rates. We have a rate structural imbalance. The Medicaid rates we use today,
they're too low because doctors are walking away.
Doctors are, but hospitals aren't.
Okay, so hospitals are paying too much for hospitals.
We're paying the wrong providers, and we're paying for the wrong things.
So you'd cut those rates from hospitals that you think are getting overpaid?
No. I'd reform those rates. Those rates are based on 1987 medical practices.
But there'd be a net, they would be reformed in a way. There was a net decrease of about $1.5 billion.
We're paying for things we don't need. It's time. We've got to pay attention.
Was Children's Memorial Hospital, when Rod Blagojevich was being asked for, how much was he being asked for? Do you remember?
30 million, something like that.
30 million?
Yeah, I think that was. They wanted a rate enhancer of about $30 million.
Was that a legit increase that Children's Hospital needed? You don't think they needed that?
You ought to take a look at Children's Memorial Hospital and ask how much they have in their foundation. I think you'll find that there's 5 or 6. There's a lot of money in their foundation.
And so they could just deal with that? You mean 30 million could have come from their foundation as opposed to their reimbursement rate?
In other words, there's a lot of not-for-profit hospitals that don't show a profit because they're not-for-profit, but they make surpluses. Okay, and we've got to stop that game. University of Chicago and Northwestern fight for Medicaid patients. Do you think they're fighting for Medicaid patients because they lose money on them? They don't lose money on them.
Your point is there's no accounting profit, but there's, in a sense, a profit that gets paid out in salaries and other ways.
They make surpluses.
And surpluses get paid to benefit people.
Or they go into their foundation where it's discretionary, or it goes into additional
University
construction.
of Chicago would do that? I went there. You think they would do that?
Well, where do you think they afforded that vice president of something or other at $250,000? A bright woman they had working for him made $250,000 at University of Chicago
I still say it's the best damn university in the country.
It may be, but I don't think their hospital's very good. And I'm a little disappointed in their economics department because they're not even sure that they believe in Milton Friedman anymore.
Who said that?
Well, there was a big controversy because they didn't want a Milton Friedman center
not
there.
The university wanted. There were some radicals that they let on the campus who were saying that don't be fooled by
Bill Ayers? Was he one of those radicals?
No, but no.
You should be embarrassed. If you're
the Milton Friedman Institute was adopted, is there, is thriving.
Good.
And if you want to sign a check, I'm sure we can. We don't endorse things here, but I'm sure we could help you.
You'll have to send me that.
The University of Chicago, like other hospitals, may be doing some things or getting away with some things, but it wouldn't be just the University Hospital. If it is, I'm not saying it is. It's hospitals in general. People have to take a look at it, make sure the reimbursement rates.
Yes, we're spending.
University of Chicago is top notch. So you can't come on this show and say anything.
God bless you. I love it. If I was sick,
and the economics department is even better.
Yes, that's what I like the best about it. And law school? No,
it's great.
It's more John Marshall.
No, that's great.
Okay.
No.
Okay. So anyway, you have to take the budget seriously. You have to work on a Medicaid program. You have to take seriously what you're doing in the correctional department. The United States has the highest percentage of its population in prison of any country in the world.
Okay, so this is all reform.
To be serious.
You need to cut spending, but you need to reform, and this is what Senate Republican Leader Rodonio was saying on.
She's absolutely right. These are
systems. Show? It was a competitive show. It was a small show. Was it Fox Chicago Sunday?
I don't know. But these are systems that spend money. It's not programs.
Just kidding. It's a great show.
It's not about getting rid of textbooks out of schools or getting rid of microwave ovens out of motel rooms.
School voucher, school choice. That would save a lot of money because competition.
Money and it would be good for kids.
It'd be good for kids.
That's what's most important.
And you support that unequivocally.
Yes.
For the Chicago Public Schools?
Yes.
4 areas outside the Chicago
I would
public
hope
schools?
someday it's available to every student.
Including your district, the 22nd
Yes,
district?
yes.
And the 22nd district?
Good public schools should not, I mean, they shouldn't fear.
I should say the district you want to represent. Senator Nolan is invited. He currently
U46,
represents
District
that.
300 are the two biggest
It includes
districts.
Hoffman Estates. It includes
Hoffman Estates,
Streamwood, Bartlett, Schaumburg, Elgin, where you're
South
from.
Elgin, East and West Dundee, and Carpentersville.
All right.
So,
the
yeah.
land of Jack Roser.
Yes, well,
Carpentersville.
land of milk and honey.
Is he one of your constituents if you win?
No, actually, he lives in Barrington. His
Oh, his
factory,
plant is
his
in
plant, right? His factory.
No, he's a constituent in a sense.
In a sense, in a sense.
All right.
So,
Okay.
yeah, no, I think vouchers are good for kids.
So wait, so we took care of the $6 billion operating deficit, but we have those $7 billion in old bills. What do you
Right.
do to handle that? That's where the borrowing comes in?
Well, you'd have to transitionally borrow for it, because right now you've already borrowed it. You've borrowed it from human service agencies and from hospitals and school districts because you haven't paid it. So I would bond that, get it paid for on a 3 or a 4-year bond, and then take all the revenue growth that the state of Illinois gets when you start cleaning it up and pay off that bond first before there was any new programs.
But you would have to, according to John Tillman at the Illinois Policy Institute, maybe that's where you got the idea, or maybe he got it from you, but he says have revenue, cut your spending, have revenue exceed spending. He says the average rate of growth when things are normal in Illinois is 4.8% for revenue. Did Mr. Tillman get that right?
That's about right, yeah.
And
Yeah,
he
it
says
depends
you
just
could,
what universe
he
you
says
look
if
at.
you kept spending at the population and see consumer price index growth, it would be 2.4%. That difference between 4.8 and 2.4 starts getting plowed into reducing debt and also taking care of your underfunded liabilities.
Yeah, I'd even go further, but yeah, that's reasonable.
You would go further.
I would go further. I would freeze state spending at the new reduced level
So you think you
until
could
you paid your back bills.
You could cut spending, you could have a rate of growth for spending at less than 2.4%
Yes.
for the state of Illinois.
You could for 4 years until you
Have you
paid off your
told John
obligation.
Tillman that you would push
No,
it?
I think John did a good job of putting a proposal out. I mean, I don't want to nitpick. I mean,
Yeah.
what difference does it make?
He put forth a balanced budget.
Yes, he did.
He complied with the Constitution in the way that the General Assembly
No,
did not?
not quite, because he did not do line item appropriate. I mean, what he did was he put out a budget plan, and God bless him for that. It's the only one I saw out there that
But he
was
doesn't have
comprehensive.
each line item in there.
No, it's not a budget. I mean, a budget would be about
He
this
does
thing.
pretty damn well for his budget. I mean, what do you think he's got he's not like you guys. He doesn't have $30 million to invest in this.
No, exactly. No, I think what he did was fine. What he did is what governors are supposed to do. And they're supposed to turn to the General Assembly and say, this is my vision for spending and allocation.
That's what you
Write
would do
the
if you were
budget.
governor,
Yes.
and even as a state senator.
That's
if you
what should be done. That we
if
actually
you were
did it
chairing
for a
the
few years.
Appropriations
Yes.
Committee in the state Senate, that's what you would do. But that would require the Republicans winning
No.
eight additional seats to get the
No,
majority.
it doesn't have to be that way. I mean, John Cullerton could suddenly have a flash of brilliance and decide that what they're doing, what he and Mike Madigan are doing to the state is wrong. I mean, it doesn't have
You think
to be.
Senate, you know Senate President John Cole.
Yes, I do.
He's been on the show. He's made it quite clear when he's been on the show, he thought we should increase taxes. He thought the state of Illinois should have increased it when Rod Blagojevich came in 6 years ago, 8 years ago, whatever it was. So you think he's going to have an epiphany and
No,
suddenly
you
agree
said
with?
you said the Republicans had to win. I didn't say that.
Most
I
likely,
disagreed.
most likely.
Yeah, that's the best scenario. But the truth is,
I'm not saying
the
I
truth
favor
is,
that. I'm just predicting here
Mike
that that's
Madigan
what
and
would
John
have to happen.
Cullerton ought to look in the mirror and take a look at the mess they've made of the state of Illinois. Both of them supported Rod Blagojevich for re-election. Both of them have avoided any kind of fundamental reform of the legislative process. Both of them agreed to walk out of Springfield this year without a budget and violated the Constitution. That's wrong. If they don't want to uphold their oath, they should resign. I mean, I just think we just got to be that square with the viewers. This is a problem that we have in the state of Illinois. This is a deficit of leadership that leads to the
But
financial
you've taken
chaos.
care of that. So now we've taken care of the financial deficit. Getting back to what you raised as the leadership deficit. As we tape on August 15th, the Blagojevich jury has been out for, I think, 11, maybe 12 days. I think
Yes.
it's 11 days. And they have not reached a verdict. And they've said, most recently what we heard from them is they said that there are 2 counts in which they have reached an agreement, the jury. There are 11 counts in which they can't reach an agreement, and there are 11 that they said they hadn't deliberated on. People think they meant they hadn't voted on. Okay? But let me just ask you, State Senator Steve Rauschenberger. I know you got a great degree from William & Mary, but it's not a graduate degree. It's not a law degree.
Right, that's right.
But that's
right.
not going
I'm
to
a
stop
lawyer.
you from having views
No,
on
I have
law.
opinions.
You always go to parties where people say, I'm not a lawyer, but, and every lawyer wants to punch that person in the face. But so you're not a lawyer, but. What's the deal here? Do you think Rod Blagojevich, from what you know, broke the law?
Yes, absolutely. I think Rod Blagojevich broke the law. I don't.
Let's take-
I don't pretend to understand the indictments, but I saw behavior that was wrong and that I think was criminal when I was in the
Give me the
legislature.
best quid pro quo that you think it shows he broke the law in terms of, did he sell the Senate seat? Did he do what he had to do to break the law?
I don't know anything.
Not, he of course didn't sell it, but did he attempt to sell the Senate seat? You've read trial testimony, you've read about this.
No, I don't have an
I
opinion.
think he said the Senate seat is golden.
I-
He said, you
right,
know
that's
this,
fine.
okay. And he said, Senate seat's golden. He says, and Blagojevich says, look, I'm not going to give this up for nothing. I want something from it. You know, and the administration, the Obama administration, they want Jarrett there, but they'll give us appreciation. We don't know what that meant. Maybe it meant something. He didn't think it meant anything.
Yeah, didn't
So,
think it meant enough.
a day before he's arrested, he's thinking, Jackson's made clear he'll give something tangible. This is all quoting verbatim, but close enough. It's all on wiretap, so they got that part. He wants something tangible. He's telling his brother to go out and talk to the Jacksons because although they were low on the list, they're now high because they made clear that they were going to do that. So he didn't because they found out they were being wiretapped, so the brother never had the conversation. But is there enough there for attempted sale?
That's up to the jury. What I will tell you is the 7 years of his administration was a criminal act in what they did to almost 2 million school kids as he led the state down into chaos.
No, that's
what's
impeachment
happened
stuff.
in human service?
Where's the criminal violation?
No. You take a look. They broke the Constitution every single year in their stewardship of the budget. I mean,
but the public corruption stuff, the sales stuff,
that's for the jury.
You got to have an idea. I mean,
I think he
calls up the guy at Children's Hospital. He says, "We'll take care of the rates, the rate increase you want." But he said, "But hold it, be quiet about it for a week." And then he sends his brother to call him. His brother may not have known about the other part of it, but Rod knew.
Yeah,
is that enough right there?
I think it's quid pro quo.
If you were in the jury, you'd say yeah.
Yes, if I was in the jury.
Okay.
But I'm not, so I'm safe.
But your prediction: will the jury acquit him? Will they have a mistrial? Will it be a hung jury?
He'll be convicted.
He'll be convicted of at least some counts. Do you think most of the counts? Okay.
I don't.
If he weren't, would it be bad for Illinois?
Yes.
Would the public policy say in Illinois you can get away with this stuff?
Yes. The effect on the people in Springfield who already don't take their job serious enough would be very bad if they think that people can get away with the kind of gross malfeasance and misfeasance of this administration. I think it needs to go further.
So if jurors are watching this, as they watch public affairs all the time, you've given your guidance.
That's right.
They're not supposed to be watching, but people can never stay away from public affairs.
That's right. And I think people of Illinois ought to hold more people accountable than Rod Blagojevich. There was a Speaker of the House who allowed this to go on for 7 years and knew about it.
Politically, they ought to hold him accountable.
Yes, absolutely.
Do you think he's violated the law too, Speaker?
I don't know. I don't know.
But you'll say politically he ought to be.
Politically, absolutely. Emil Jones, who sat on the pension committee for 20 years before becoming.
But he's not holding office now, is he?
No, but it doesn't make any difference.
Senator
He allowed Rod Blagojevich.
Senate President
Cullen.
Yes.
For the tail end of the. I mean, at what point are these people responsible?
Can the Republicans? It's August 15th. Can the Republicans win 8 seats to give them the majority in the state Senate?
It's very difficult to do because only a third of the Senate seats are up this time. But it's possible.
It's possible.
Yes.
Can they win 12 House seats?
I think that is very likely. I think that.
You think there's going to be a Republican majority in the House?
I think there's a very good chance there'll be a Republican majority in the House.
Does that mean there's no tax increase no matter who's governor?
No, I don't think so.
Because there are Republicans who will support a tax increase.
I think it's crucial that we have Bill Brady as governor. I mean,
because there are Republicans in the House who might support a tax increase.
No, because we've got a governor today that's got one black sock and one blue one because he can't make up his mind on anything.
Can Brady win?
Yeah, Brady will win.
What about the media who say he's too conservative?